Hey everybody, welcome to the Slick Tree Podcast. I'm your host, Colby Langford. The point of this show is to help improve ourselves as dogmen and to raise the quality of the dogs on the end of our lead. So let's settle in, turn the volume up, and let's see if we can't learn a trick or two together from our guests. Hey everybody, you are listening to the Slick Tree Podcast. I'm your host, Colby Langford, and today I have Jennifer Jordan Hall that is with KYK9 Search Dogs here with me. We've just spent the most of the morning and into the afternoon doing a probe search for unmarked graves at some of our tribal property here in northeast Oklahoma, and really interesting stuff. Jennifer's been kind enough to allow me to interview her and kind of learn a little bit more about what her and her dogs do. So how are you today, Jennifer?
I'm good. Thanks for asking me to do this. It's really nice that you're interested in learning about it, and I really appreciate all your help that you gave this morning. You did all that hard work, so it was really fun working with you, and I appreciate it very much.
Well, I enjoyed watching the dogs work, and it was just an interesting experience all around. So kind of to lay out what we did this morning, we have a piece of property that has a cemetery on it, but it's a tribal cemetery, and we suspected there were unmarked graves on a part of it. And so basically what we did is we laid out a grid with flags, and then we used probes, and we walked through in a line and probed out. I'd hate to guess how many probes. It was probably 100 yard by 250 yard, if I was just guessing.
Probably that sounds about right.
Area rectangle, and we shoved a half-inch probe, 18 inches, 24 inches, about every 6 foot by 2 foot.
Yep.
2.5 foot. So we poked a lot of holes in the ground today.
You worked really hard. You worked really hard. Yeah. And the reason that we're doing that, well, go ahead.
Oh, you can jump in anytime. You're the expert on this. Why don't you just tell us kind of?
Yeah. So my dogs that we were working today are Pocket and Wick, and they are both Parson Russell Terriers. So they're smaller dogs. Are not what you typically think of with search dog. They're scent detection dogs, and they have. I've been doing this for about 20 years, and I have used Parson Russell Terriers the entire time. So I've had 4 dogs. It's not the typical breed, but I really love them, and they have their challenges and their but it's just they've worked really hard for me, and they've done a good job. So that's what I use, the type of dog I use. And so right now we started out doing scent detection dogs. You can find missing persons. You can find, which is what I started out doing, and then expanded into doing human remains, and then I started to do more forensic stuff, and then was working with an anthropologist, and then over time they asked me to come to a site with his ancient remains, Native American remains, and I wasn't sure if the dog was going to do it or not. I said, sure, I can give it a try, and because they use the other remote sensing modalities that they had tried, like GPR and stuff, it wasn't telling them, it couldn't give them the information about burials. They were concerned about finding these older burials. And so we went and gave it a try, and darn, it was so exciting. Pocket, she gave her trained indication and did a little cry, that's not trained. It's just she cries when she's on something. And they ended up finding 11 bodies after that search based on what she'd done, based on the areas. So, they were really excited. I was so excited. And Pocket was just happy to be working, and so we started. That's how we started doing this. It's human remains detection, HRD. With the police, you often hear the word cadaver. Human remains detection is what I use. I prefer it just in terms of being kind of respectful in terms of the term that you use, and then because my dogs find historic, and historic archaeologically is a set time period, and it's kind of like basically from European settlement. So, but my dogs do more than that. So we call it archaeological human remains detection to make it clear that it's. So they found remains that are 3,000 years old, and like the 11 bodies that Pocket found that very first time were about 1,000 years old. And so that's why we call it archaeological HRD. We just call it ARC HRD for, short, archaeological ARC HRD. So, because it's a very specific type of training. That's one of the challenges of doing this is being able to train the dogs to do something this old. And the challenges are at the most basic level. How do you get how do you know where to find something like that to train the dogs on it?
That's exactly what one of my questions was going to be, is how do you, unless you just, how do you find a grave that old that...
Right.
How do you find one to start with?
And then here's the other...
To train off of.
Right. And then when you do find those, when those there also are... graves are sacred, and so if they're found, you've got to be respectful of that, and so it's a multi-level, layered problem, and I was lucky enough that because we were doing forensic work, my dogs had found. I always get a little emotional when I talk about this, but they had found the first time they found a body, and to make a very long story short, they found the bones of this family's father, and afterwards they gave some of those bones back to the dogs so the dogs could then help other people. And to me, it's just moved me every time I think about it, because that was so generous of them, the most terrible time in their life, and they were willing, they were grateful. It's so amazing to see people be grateful, and they've just lost their father or their mother or and it just really, it shows you the wonderfulness of humanity. But anyways, to be so generous back to the dogs. And I think it's because they see the dogs working, and they see how hard the dogs are working, and they can see what the dog is doing, and they can see, okay. So I was lucky enough to get some source. It's very difficult to find source like that. And there are other places where people can get source. There are body farms where I think there are now 5 or 6, and I may be wrong on the number, where they study bodies that are decaying and stuff, and some of them let dogs train there. And but in terms of how I did it, we were started out doing forensic stuff where we were finding missing persons, and my dogs happened to find disarticulated remains. And they kept finding different cases, so they were kind of used to that. And then that's why, and I've been working with anthropologists in that. And then they said, "Hey, could you come try this?" And I was like, "We could try." And then this turned out to be really, really good at it. And they've just gotten better and better. And of course, it's kind of a new area well, dogs have found things for 10,000 years, right? I mean, so it's not new to them, but it's new to us in terms of how to use, how use them as a tool to help find these things and protect them. I mean, so they in doing that, I've learned our processes have gotten better. Our our methodologies, we have all these different circumstances and different searches, and so it's been developing a methodology and a training method, and it's been really exciting.
Yeah. So today, after we went through and did the tile probes, I believe what you called it.
Yeah.
So now we have this field set out that has been probed, and that's to let scent come up out of the ground from, for lack of better terms, decomposing matter.
Right. So first of all, the dogs can distinguish animal remains from human remains, and they will not alert on animal remains. So that's the first thing. Then in this particular situation, we were looking more for historic burials as opposed to ancient burials. It doesn't make a difference, but that's what we were doing. And it was the topography was a flat field, and the tile probing is like the tile probe is about 4 feet high. It's got a T handle on the top, and it's like what you see when people are using it look for electric lines and stuff. Except this one, it's got a round end, not a pointed end. And I was like, when I first started, I was like, someone had a pointed end, and I was like, I want that one. That's going to be easier.
That's what I was thinking whenever I saw that. I was like, it'd be way easier if we just ground this off. Like,
right.
Wouldn't be pushing a little mushroom head in there.
And they're like, okay, you take the pointed one, but it's harder. And it was, because so the round end creates a little bit of suction.
Okay. So
that the rest of the shaft comes through. And it's so much easier. So I learned that kind of the hard way. But so they're used in archaeological contexts, and so it's got a round end. And basically, I have developed that. I use that with my dogs because on these type of searches, because it aerates the soil, and like you described very well, basically it's like the concept of a grid search for a missing person. You're basically, standing about 6 feet apart, and you're doing tile probes to get a good grid on where you're searching. And I think it's helpful because I think it helps the dogs just have something to focus on, because they're working really, really hard in a very small area. Like if you think of regular search dogs, they can cover, one of the big things, dogs can cover such a big area and they can go so far. And this is a very opposite. It's kind of like dogs are working really intensely. I mean, dogs sniff like 5 times a second anyway, but then when they're really smelling, they're stacking, and you can hear it. And these dogs are doing that the entire time. It's really, really tiring. So it's a tool that I use to help them kind of stay focused and of course access the scent. Now their scent is so great, they may be able to access the scent anyway, but it's worked very, very well. So I think it's I've been using it when I can. Now if we're in an environment where there are trees, or there are certain different environmental factors, I won't use a probe. Like trees will act like a probe. So
really,
yeah. So like it's kind of really cool. So a tree, right? So through transpiration, right, through the roots, it's bringing the water up to the leaves so they can grow. So that's sucking the scent out. So a lot of times you'll see the dog. It's so cool when it happens. You'll see the dog working, and then they get to this tree, and then they'll just go up the tree. Like there's a squirrel or something up the tree. It is so cool. I mean, because it's not up the tree. It's down below. And what's also really cool is that they will only do that on one side of the tree. Like they can tell you what side of the tree it's coming. Like they will not be interested in the other side of the tree, right? It's not just like, oh, I like this tree, but they have like a side that they like. So, or you'll even see them, like that's when it's really exciting, when they kind of go up the tree, but then you can see them just, when they're getting sent, they'll throw their head up, and they'll look up. So, different. We use different tools to access the scent. Fence posts, rocks can provide access. I mean, scent goes through cement, so pretty well. It's a porous material, so sometimes there's cracks in cement that you can take advantage of. So there's all different ways. But on this particular type of search, where it's a big area for what we're doing, that's why we tile probe. I've not asked the dogs. They've not told me. They've not said, "Hey, we need tile probing." But they focus really well. And so my job in all of this, and I only have one job. I am the weak link in this entire thing, and my job is to just put the dogs in a position to be successful. Because if I do that, they'll tell you it's there or it's not there. And so my job is to get the variables so that they can be in a position to do their work. And then my other job is to try to they communicate to me, and I have to be able to understand that.
So, if you can kind of run us through, so we've probed this area, what considerations in this specific type of deal? So where we were at today, it's pretty flat out there. It's almost always windy, and we had a pretty good breeze today. It was pretty steady. I don't know, probably 10, 12 mile an hour wind if I was guessing.
Yeah, I'd guess about 12. Yeah, something like that. It wasn't as bad as it has been sometimes. But
it wasn't blowing your hat off your head.
Yeah,
but it was a constant,
good steady breeze. Yeah.
Constant wind.
Yeah.
How are you approaching that? And is there different factors? How are you planning on kind of working that? Because I saw how you kind of watched how you did without asking too many questions and bothering you, but I noticed you kind of went on the downwind side across, almost like you were hoping they were going to catch wind and work up into a scent cone. Is there any? Can you just kind of go over that? How you're approaching?
Well, so in this particular, it sometimes depends on where you're situated. But in this particular situation, I could have started upwind or downwind. I started downwind, and and then I for the dogs to have a chance to catch the scent. But because the scent is so deep, right? That's why you have the holes. You're trying to keep them focused. And so I want the wind to be as little a factor as possible. So then that's why we work I let them go at their speed, but I work them on lead. They're in a harness. I work them one at a time. And I let them, each one works differently. Each one works uniquely. And so I will go, obviously I will go with them and, where they're wanting to go because, they're smelling. I'm not. But I then try to, I have a plan in mind, and then, of course, we'll vary the plan based on what the dog does. And then, like today, we had to go, I think we went out 3 times to cover the area, and so we had to be aware. And I have someone with me, thank you, for like the pin flags. We flag, so if the dog alerts, we will mark it, and we use pin flags. I use different colors for each dog. And then I'll also put the pin flags just for markers for me, like, okay, we've stopped at this point. We need to come back and cover this point. And then, as a team, and I consider the person helping with the flagging and the people who are doing the tile program, we're a team, right? So it's a whole team. So if you guys see something, or if you, say, hey, I don't know if you've covered this, or did you see the dog do that? I'll be like, oh, okay, thanks, or yeah, or so just as much feedback, because it's all every this is why I like this so much. Every single search is different. I mean, you could have 2 fields with 2 different days, and it's going to be different. And so it's just really fun to watch the dogs just have a new experience every day. I mean, I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Another thing I'd meant to ask you earlier about it is, so with different situations, so like from the presentation you did whenever you were here last time, like sometimes you're looking for missing kids that are recent, sometimes you're looking for a 2,000-year-old grave.
Yep.
whenever you get the dogs out of the truck, are you changing what you're doing with the dogs as far as
Well, that's a
to,
really good
to prep the
question.
dogs to kind of let them know what
Yeah,
what they're supposed to be looking for?
that's a really good question. No, if it's if so, I do have three commands. So one is so when I first train my dogs, and this for better or for worse, this is how I like to do it, and people would disagree. I start training my dog, and I have them do scent trails, so scent specific trails on, and so I want them to understand the concept of the scent and trailing it and getting to it, and so I do that. And actually, all my dogs have been certified for trailing and have found missing people in trailing. I don't know if Wick has done that yet, but the other three have. I'll think about it in a second. But then I move into the human remains, and so what ended up happening when I first started this, so needed a command, and then you can do things and find an article. So when I first started, okay, the command is, find. You're gonna find Mary. So find was the command, and then it was like, okay, now we're gonna try to find like your backpack or your keys or, you know, something that a victim has left. So that is an object. So I use the word search for that. And so then when I this was back in the very beginning when I was learning. So I got to HRD, and they're like, okay, what's your command? And I'm like, I didn't have a command. And so I remember driving it was in a training, and we were going from one place, but we're going to do the next thing. So, when you get there, tell us your command. So I'm in the car driving, and I'm like, command. I'm like, let's see, play ball. I'm a sports fan, and I'm like, touchdown. And I just couldn't come up with anything. And so I just got out of the car, and I was like, what's your command? And I'm like, just do it. And so that ended up being my command, and it has been my command ever since. And that's the command I give them for when they're searching for human remains. And that is not scent specific. So that's why I said, does it matter how old it is?
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, it's just that is the scent of human decomposition. My dogs for the missing persons, I have scent specific. I train them scent specific. There are some dogs that do area searches where they're just looking for a scent of a human that's alive. So I just have the scent specific, but then in all the human remains, the blood, that's just one command because it doesn't matter who it's from.
Mm-hmm.
So and it doesn't matter, they don't know. It doesn't matter if it's a month old or 2,000 years old. They're doing the same job.
Okay.
At least I think that's what they think. I don't know.
It's like I've heard described before that like we walk into a room and we smell someone cooking a pot of soup, whereas a dog walks into the room and they can smell all the individual ingredients.
Yeah.
In like layers.
Well, their ability to discriminate is so incredible. And the analogy that helps me the most is sight. So because I'm visual, so they can smell something that we could see at a third of a mile. They could see 3,000 miles, like in terms of just the
Wow.
difference in the
Yeah.
capacities. To me, that would be like from Florida to California, right? So to me, that's just really helpful in terms of how much better they are. They'll give examples like in 2 Olympic-sized swimming pools, they can smell a teaspoon of coffee. It's like that doesn't help me very much,
Mm-hmm.
but the sight thing for me is like, dang.
Yeah. So you've now approached the field with your dog, and tell me about how the alerts work and kind of the way that you and the dog are.
So both my dogs are trained. So they have their trained indication is a down, and when you're working, that's the ideal, right? You get them to go down. When you're working really old scent, 2,000 years old. Sometimes it's communication, like their body language changes, and it's all the everything, the alert behavior, right? So they have their natural alert behavior. And so my dog Wick has a really, really good natural alert behavior, where they look me in the eye and he just freezes. You saw it. His whole body just goes frozen and his tail's up and he just looks at me. He's like, oh my God. And he's kind of shaking. And, ideally he would be doing the trained indication, and sometimes he does, and sometimes, it depends. So I have to be able to watch the dogs and know what they're doing. Ideally you always get that trained indication. And with him, I actually kind of like the way that he communicates with me, because it's so crystal clear, and he's communicating with me. I don't know if you saw that.
I was trying to pick up on which, so like with squirrel dogs, bird dogs, stuff like that, like we'll call it, like with bird dogs, it's like they're getting birdie, and that's usually like when especially a pup or any dog gets, like, you can tell when they hit into a scent cone, that's what they're trained to look for. I mean, their body language changes, and like they become more intense. They get gamey. Same thing with squirrel dogs, most hunting dogs, and so like I was trying to watch them get gamey, but at the same time they're a small terrier,
Yeah,
so
so
they
it's really hard to
kind of
understand.
always act like they're
Right,
gamey.
right. Well, one of the things you probably saw is they got slower, and they got, like, their body got a little bit more intense. But when they got into scent, both of them get a little bit slower, and then they get their intensity and their stacking increases.
Now, stacking's not something I'm like really familiar with, as far as like I haven't heard people talk about much. Can you kind of go into a description of?
Well, stacking is just when the dog is taking the scent in. Actually, I can tell you, it's what you hear the dog go, really, like that, suck in really hard, like really, really hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what they're doing actually is that when they breathe in, the air does two things, right? It's for breathing and it's for smelling, and they've got an olfactory recess, which we don't have. And so if the air that comes in faster goes back to the olfactory recess, and it sits there, and they can process it, and then they can breathe in and out, and that air does not interfere with the olfactory recess. So when they're stacking, they're taking all that stuff. They're working, because they're putting that stuff. They're taking it back there, and they're thinking about, what is this? What is this? What is this?
Okay.
So yeah, that's when I'm using that word. Everyone knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's just the word that
That you
we
use.
use.
Okay.
Yeah. You did a better sound of it than I did. So it's that thing.
Okay. So after he alerts, or after the dog alerts, how are you handling basically paying the dog for his work? How does that look?
Crazy. So my dogs are rewarded with a squirrel that I tie it on a string. It's like a shoestring, and they get that when they do it. They get that as their reward, and we just go nuts, and they pull, and then I have the squirrel, and it goes flying, and they jump after the squirrel. And
now, I do want to stop you and clarify that it is a toy squirrel.
Sorry.
It is my kids would call it a squirrel stuffy, small squirrel stuffy.
Sorry, yeah. My bad.
With being on a squirrel podcast, these guys are probably all thinking, squirrel dog podcast, they're probably all thinking that you have a squirrel.
People think I do a lot of times, but no, it's not dead. It's not alive. It was never alive. It's a stuffed squirrel. I just call it the squirrel, and then people will ask me, "Your dog is eating a squirrel?" I'm like, no, it's just, So yeah, that's really funny. I didn't mean to. So yeah, we use the stuffed squirrel, and then try to also do a food reward. Like different dogs like different things. Pocket. Each one has their different thing that they like. And so I'll do both that. Wick is my youngest dog right now, so I'm talking about him a lot because I've been thinking about him a lot. Pocket and I communicate. She's 13 and she is so experienced, and people have asked me like, how do you know? And my bad answer is, well, she and I just know, like, once we were getting certified in water, HRD water, where you have to find the body under the source under the water. And we were actually on a Coast Guard cutter. It was a huge boat, and this little teeny tiny dog on top of this big boat. And I was just like, this is a nightmare. And I was just like, we're way up above. I mean, it was a cutter. They had like four Coast Guard sailor, or I don't want to call them sailors, but they were in the boat. I mean, to run the boat. And I was like, and then she was up there and she just told me and did it. And I said, it's right here. And the guy who was certifying me goes, how did she do that? How did you know that? Because it was apparently right on. I'm like, how does she tell you that? It's like, how do you guys communicate? I'm like, so I don't know. I mean, there's the trained indication, but then there's also so anyway, I'm talking about Wick more than Pocket just because I'm in the process of learning him and the challenges, and he's my first male dog. And, and he's got a lot of drive. I mean, a lot of drive. And so, I mean, all my terriers have had a lot of drive. So when I say he's got a lot of drive, he's got a lot.
Which I would think that would be good, but at the same time, I could see it having its own challenges.
Oh yeah, it's great. I mean, that's why you saw them. They love to work. All right. I mean, part of the problem is they won't stop, and I have to be able to stop them, and they love their work, but I have to. Then the drive, becomes like getting the toy from them. I gotta, that's a whole process that I have to work on, and and they're smart dogs, right? And so I love that, but it's also a really difficult thing. It's really difficult to train them, because they have a lot of their own, opinions, and so I have to work really hard, and sometimes I'm just like. So it's a lot, but again, there's the advantages. And I don't know, people have asked, well, are these dogs better than other dogs at doing this older stuff? I mean, all dogs have the same scenting genes and ability. Like, they don't know, study from 1996, they don't have different, genes. They all have the same genes. It's just, so you pick a bird, you probably pick a bird dog based on his personality and his temperament, and they don't have, I think it's just, people have said, well, why are they really good at this? And it could be that they're closer to the ground and they're ground-based dogs. I mean, terriers are bred to go to ground to catch the fox. I mean, I don't know. And maybe there just aren't that many dogs that do this. And I don't say any particular breed is better at something than anyone else, because I don't really, I don't think that's the case. I think it depends on the handler and the dog and the personality and the whole picture. So, but people have asked me that, and I just know they're good at this. So,
fair enough. So, how did you get started with this in the beginning? Like, what got you to get into this field?
My dog Scout. I've always, helping people is really important to me, right? So just in terms of where my personality goes, and I've had terriers, and then I had Scout, and I was, she seemed to want a job, and I started to try her in tracking, and she just loved it, and I was like, so then I went to a training, and I was like, well, I said, I went to training. It's like, I don't know. And then she really liked it. And I was like, well, that's great. And I was like, oh, she really likes it, but can I do it? I was like, oh, yeah, I can do it. Can she do it? So it's just kind of developed. And then she just, was really good at it. And then it basically, it's probably the most important thing I've done. I got breast cancer. And after that, it was just like, I wanted to be able to do something that I felt was that I could do, that was helpful to other people. And like when my dogs found their first missing person alive, it's like, oh, thank God I can die, and I've done something good, and that we've helped somebody. And so that's kind of how it has started for me. And now, and with the ancient remains, it's very similar for me because it's very spiritual. And the dog, you're just in the middle of a place, and the dog says, "It's right here," and you look around, there's nothing there. And to me, it's so powerful, and it's very connective to our whole being in terms of. It just sounds kind of silly, but this is how it feels to me. So, it's it's that similar feeling of helping that one individual family. Like, earlier when I was telling you about how I got the bones, I mean, I start to cry every time I tell the story, and I could tell you about every single family that we've, helped or tried to help, or work, so. But I first had to, apparently my dogs could do it, because there's like terriers. Oh, terriers can't do this. I'm like, okay, well. And then it's like, well, my terrier really liked it, and my terrier could do it. And so I was like, okay, cool. Then I can do this. And so it just kind of, that's how it happened.
Okay. Well, do you have any? It seems like I remember. Of course, I don't remember the details. But whenever you did the presentation, you had some really good stories about different searches you'd been on. Some of them almost seemed unreal at like the age and what the age of the tracks and kind of what the dogs had followed. And I don't say unreal like I'm not.
No, right. I'm trying to remember what I would have told you about. I may have told you about. This is not, the age isn't that much, but it was in the summer, and this woman had been missing, and the law enforcement, they couldn't do anything, and so the family ended up calling me, and I said, I have to talk to law enforcement, and law enforcement says, yeah, please come down and help. But by that time, it was 6 days old, and they didn't know where this woman had gone, and it was so hot. And I remember so we got the scent article. So again, this is scent specific. We're trying to get her. We had to get her first. The biggest thing is to get the correct scent, and that's a lot harder than it sounds, because people touch stuff and they're looking, and the person's missing and they don't know what they've touched. So that's the first thing. And so we got the scent. And I remember this was Pocket, and she was going down the road, and there was like a paint truck coming down the road, like painting the road, I'm just like, there was all this stuff going on that could create all this barriers to the scent. Well, she went about 3 miles, and she went down the road, and then she went up and over, those walking pads that go over a road and then go take the stairs. She went down one of those, and then we went across a little creek and up through. I mean, we were going everywhere, and it was getting dark, and it was so hot, and so I stopped, and I said, someone was like, okay, I'll go get the car, and so we're resting. And Pocket got up, and she just kept going, and I was like, okay, and so we kept going, and then she just stopped. She found the woman. She was off the side, down a embankment off the side of like a 4-lane highway, and no one would have found her because there was nothing on the other side. There was a railroad track and just a bunch of nothing. There's no houses. I mean, you wouldn't have ever seen her, and I'll never forget it. So I climbed over the guardrail, and then we kind of slid down on my butt, and Pocket, and I saw her lying there. We didn't know, and Pocket kind of went up to her, and her head was face down the hill, and and Pocket went up to her, and she'd been working so hard to find her, and she went up to her and she smelled her, and then she went up to her head and smelled her head. She just took a big sigh, and she's like, oh, and you could just tell it was like she's okay, and Pocket just relaxed, and it was almost like she was saying, like, you're okay, and it just brought tears to my eyes, right? And then Pocket just came back to me, but it's like she had to smell the body, and it's like she touched her with her nose on the head, and she's done that before 2 times with 2 other bodies that we found, and I don't know why, and but it's yeah, I don't know why, but I don't know if that was one of the stories I told her now, but that was 6 days, and that was really hard because, well, no one, you can't find her, but then the police were like, well, how did you do that? I'm like, I didn't do it, she did.
The dog did.
Yeah.
No, that's like, I mean, that's an amazing story. I think, and I do want to tell you, I appreciate you. I appreciate you sharing that with us. Uh, it's really amazing what dogs are capable. I mean, it's a 6-day-old track on a concrete sidewalk.
Yeah, I mean,
down.
Yeah.
Say 3 miles down a road.
It was at least 3 miles. Yeah.
And then
and
up
it was
and over
and through and around and then the thing is, I had stopped her, and she was exhausted, and everyone thought the search was over, and then she just got up and kept going. I'm like, okay, so we just, I mean, but the way that she interacted with the victim was, it's indescribable. I haven't described it very well, and she's done that like 3 times on 3 different, that same type of. I mean, there's been other situations, but that same where she goes and touches their head. But I don't know, in terms of like length of time of different things that we've done. I mean, and told you about. We did. I'm now all emotional about this other thing. I can't think of other stories because I'm just thinking about that one.
You got any happy stories, maybe? To
happy stories. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So I will say this just so that you know a little bit more about me. So one of my kids is I have a 6-year-old little girl that is level 3 autistic, mostly nonverbal. I mean, honestly, really kind of a flight risk. I assume you've probably done work looking for elopement children before.
Yeah, actually, we were
elopers.
Yeah, so that's yeah, and so we were the search dog team for the Jefferson County Public Schools in Louisville, Kentucky, and they have about 100,000 students. And their head of their police was the school police, very, I guess, progressive, and they had a bomb dog guy, and he was working with me, and he said, "Oh, you got to have her." So they would call me out when people went missing, when kids went missing, and they found every kid that and it was so scary, so scary, and. I mean, I've got so many different stories of kids that the dogs found. And the neat thing about these particular dogs is that a lot of kids are afraid of dogs. And so these dogs are less intimidating. And it just is kind of a benefit. I remember this one search where the kid had been missing. And so from the school, went to the school. He'd only been there for a few days. Where we took the scent was from his notebook. Where he wrote where he'd written his last thing. So he took scent because his hand had been off of the notebook, and took scent from there. And we ended up searching, and we were going through these woods, and the police had been looking for him for ever. And we went into the woods, and I had this one police officer with me. He was kind of looking at me in the eyes, pointing his finger to his eyes, and to me, like back and forth, saying, "I'm going to go this way." And and I think it was Scout. No, it was, just you could just tell the body language started to change, started to take off or running through the woods, and there's the kid just sitting there, and he looked terrified, and I said, and I said, hi. I said, and he just didn't. I said, I was giving Scout some water. I said, I think it was Pocket. I said, here, do you want some water? The dog's water. Yeah. I said, would you like? And he didn't want to come, but he came with Pocket. It was Pocket. He came with Pocket, and he was like, yeah. And so he walked out holding Pocket's leash. And so the police said they'd never been so happy. They walked out. This kid's walking out with the dog. Didn't want to come near us, right, as people, but the dog. And it was like, so, that was really, really cool. I mean, that would be helpful, and we've had autistic kids that we've had to search for, and that's been terrifying as well.
So, like on a search like that, where you're going out of school, which, like, what to kind of relate back to squirrel dogs, like I've always been impressed, and I think what a good squirrel dog like what I like to hunt is doing is they're really using their winding ability to figure out. I think it's a combination of they can catch the squirrel in the tree's wind, downwind of it, and then go over and hopefully pinpoint actual track scent on a tree, or just be good enough at wind and one to know that I can smell him. He's up over there.
Right.
But to think about, like, if you've ever sat in a tree stand, there's squirrels bouncing everywhere, going everywhere in woods that don't know that there's a person in them. For a dog to be able to run through there and say, like, oh, hey, like, this is the hottest squirrel track, when that squirrel might have been 5 squirrels bouncing around there everywhere, and, like, they can pick the hottest, freshest one just like they know. Whereas, like, to do a search like what you're talking about, you've got all these different places your target scent has been walking around touching things for days, for as long as they've been there, and then they have to pick the hottest one,
right,
to take out on the track on. So like with those, are you doing like a perimeter search with the dog around the school?
You call it the hottest, I call it the freshest.
Okay.
So yeah, it's the same thing. Hot probably makes more sense, but I call it the freshest scent, because if you imagine a kid like at your house, right, there's gonna be all this scent. So then you do a perimeter, and I just let the dog kind of take an inventory, and then they'll know. And they'll go with the freshest scent. Like, all I could think about with the Nancy Guthrie case is, did they have a search dog there just to tell them? Because, what direction? We've done car trails. Pocket's done a 6-mile car trail. And good trailing dogs, they can do that. And people are like, well, dogs can't do that. But they can, because the scent's coming out of the vehicle. And then if you're on a country road, right, and they're going, you get to a crossroad, the car's got to slow down to turn, if it's going to turn, right? And so you can, but in any event, that's an example, and I know there are tons of good tracking dogs, down near the border, and I was hoping, sure hope they had it, because that would have been a great case where you could have a dog say direction of travel, got the car, and then you lose the scent, and then you catch it and be like, okay, here's the direction of travel, and trailing dogs trained on this, working through cities and how they work intersections, and I just don't know if but that would be a great example of doing that.
So, I think what I heard you say a minute ago was, so like you would do a full perimeter search or not full perimeter search, but a full perimeter sweep, and that way the dog can say like, okay, well, they might have said like, oh, he crossed here. It's not so much that they're going to take the first track they come to. They're going to go around, and you're going to use the dog's discernment to decide which one it wants to take off
and you
on
train them for that. So you train them to take the freshest scent. So like you'll do a training where you have the person walk up and go to a T, and they walk this way and then that way, and which way is the dog going to? So the dog learns that they want the freshest trail. And so, and like with this, that's what they're good at, right? And that's, I guess, how they find their food and stuff. But and so the only difference with the scent specific trailing is that it's scent specific. So they're trying to find the freshest scent of this particular person. And that's why they're given that finding the right scent source is so important. But yeah, it's the same.
So I would assume that you probably do like some like in the squirrel dog world, we'll do like setup training, where we'll set up a specific scenario,
Yep.
and we'll do it kind of in a controlled circumstance. So like for these searches for like say a kid that has wandered off, are you when you're training your dogs, are you setting up a scenario where like maybe you have a kid or you can use whatever scent you guess you wanted to, I guess, and maybe have them run do some different stuff and then leave out and actually go
Yeah,
one time or
there are all sorts of trainers. Like there's some really great trailing trainers, and I used to do a lot of that, and I don't as much. And so I'm not an expert on that. I've just benefited from all the expertise of other people. So there are a lot of people that can talk a lot better than this than I. I've just learned how to do it. But I one of the first early training. So when I first started this is kind of funny because right. So I first started with trailing, and I was part of a bloodhound team.
Mm-hmm.
So they're bloodhounds, and then I've got a little 15-pound, 14-pound terrier. And so I remember we went to this training, and they brought people in from really kind of well-known trainers, and they didn't think we could do it. And so they set up a trail, and they had somebody walk down a river and then get out of the river and go up on a train track. And so they didn't tell me this. So I knew that we've had to deal with that from the very beginning with the dogs that I have. And it was kind of funny. Right before I came on this search, there was red paint in our yard for electrical thing, and Wick rolled in it, and he's white, and he was pink, and I was like, oh great, I'm going on this search with a little white dog who's now pink. I was like, this is just, of course he is. So. And that was an aside, but on this particular search, so the start the dog, and the point last seen is on the bank, a little bank, and in the right next to the water on the sand, right next to the water in the bank. So that was the point last seen. So my dog gets up, jumps out, and they're like, oh, this dog doesn't know what they're doing because the guy went down, but she went up the side, and anyway. Then she cut across and she cut the trail in half. And then she came and she found the person, and they were like, oh my God, I can't believe this dog did this. And I'm like, and apparently they told me what she'd done. And she basically she's really smart. And so she just cut everything off. But when I was training with those people, they gave me opportunities like that. And that's how I saw all the incredible trainings, like, when we do trails that were 4 months old. And they're incredible trainers. But one of the coolest things they did was they had everybody sit in a circle, and then they had one person just leave. And this was not scent specific, and then they had the dog go around, and they said to give the dog the work command. And the dog went after the person that left. I thought that was so cool.
Yeah.
My dog did that. I mean, it was pretty cool.
Did you say a 4-month-old trail?
Yeah. Like they
Really?
would practice like in, car trails that they would do. And, I mean, that's really, if you're going to be, that's what we trained on, and they did it. There's some just really fun trailing cases. There was one case where, this woman, this is a positive story. Here's a happy story.
Okay.
All right. So this woman, she went missing. They called from her work saying she wasn't there. And so the police went into her house. It was like a trailer, and went into the house and checked it. She wasn't there. They called in dogs. The dogs worked it. They taped it off as a crime scene, and I was gone or something. So a couple of days later, I met up with the fire chief, and they said, this is where the dogs went last. So I said, so we went to where the dogs had trailed to, and I said, my dog's not getting anything. Neither of my dogs. And I said, so they're either sick and I was like, well, let's just go back to the house to see if they get anything, because it was scent specific. And I said, well, let's just go back there. And they didn't go anywhere. I mean, they wouldn't leave the house. So I was like, so then the police came, and the police unlocked the door. So we went into the house, and we went into this room, and there was a big water bed. And my one dog kind of got on top of the water bed and was just kind of acting really like weird. And I was like, okay. And so I took her. I was like, this is really weird. And so I took her, put her in, and I got the other dog. The other dog comes in. That was Remy. And then Scout comes in. She goes to the waterbed, and up at the front of the waterbed, there's the wall, and there's the headboard, and Scout kind of pulls in, and I look over, and there's like a hole in the waterbed, but on the headboard. So on the ground, between the right and left side, there's a hole. And Scout just pulls and goes, and I hear her bang, and then she does this bark, and I was like, oh my God. And so I'm pulling her back out, and the fire chief's there. He's like, I was like, I think there might be something in there. And he's like, I said, you better check. He said, no, you check. You're down there. I said, no, you check. You got the flashlight. He said, here, I've got the dog. He said, here, I'll give you the flashlight. And I was like, so I take the little flashlight, and I'm just like looking under the bed, and I'm like, golly, it's really big underneath here. I was like, there's a lot of space under here. There's a Christmas tree. I mean, there was a Christmas tree. And I was like, oh, wow. And I was like, and then I saw a blanket, and I put my hand on it, and I was like, oh, I think that's like a leg. And I was like, maybe it was a tripod. And I was like, I think it was a tripod or something. So I come back out, and I was like, I think there might be something in there. So I take the dogs back. So then they call. So then the police come, and then the police come and look under, and the guy's under there looking for a while, and there's nothing being said. And I'm like, okay, there's nothing there, thank God. And then he's like, and he comes back up, and his face is just white. I mean, just really white. And he's like, we've got a body. So I'm like, oh God. So they call the coroner. So then we're sitting there, and all of a sudden I hear I'm in the living room, bang, hands up where I can see them. And I'm just like, my hands are up. I'm like, oh my God, we're going to die. This was like, and then the fire chief took action, right? He throws the bed off, and the woman was there underneath, and she was alive. They pull her out, and they thought she was dead. She's dead. So they start doing CPR, and then it's like she's breathing. So they call the ambulance, but then she coded again, and it's like, she's dead. She's alive. She's dead. And what they thought happened was that she had been under there for the 4 days, and she was just about dead. And apparently Scout had hit her and scared her enough to wake her up, so she was making a noise. Because and that's what they heard. So that's what, when they heard the noise, they were like, but then she coded on them, and they got her back. So I was just like, so I'm trying to get out, and it's hailing outside, and I'm like, I can't get out. This is like, it was awful, but she was alive. And so that was a really great story where the dogs, the house was closed up. It was a crime scene. It was done, and she would have been, and just luckily, and that was again me just, the dogs just doing their thing, and me just saying, what are they doing? But yeah, then it was really funny because the mayor called me. He's like, "You're a hero." I said, "I'm not a hero. This is the dogs. This is." So dogs do incredible things that have nothing to do. I mean, we just are at the end of the leash. You know what I'm saying? But that's just a happy story, I think.
Yeah.
It was scary at the time because at first
like
we
it.
thought she was dead, and then she was alive, but then she died again, and then she was alive. So it worked out.
Yeah. Well, Jennifer, we've been recording for about an hour now. Is there anything you'd like to talk about or say in closing?
And I just really appreciate your. I think it's really cool that you have this podcast, and I appreciate your asking me. I just kind of feel like I've been just rambling a little bit, but maybe hopefully this is interesting or
I
helpful.
think it's good. I think it's interesting. So,
yeah, if you, it's really been nice talking with you, and I again appreciate all the help that you gave this morning on this search that we did. We couldn't have done it without you.
well, I think that's. I think if I hadn't shown up, it still would have happened. So
don't know
I
about
think that's a
that.
little bit of a stretch. But
don't know.
is there any way that maybe if someone listens to this and they weren't familiar with this, how can someone reach out to you?
Sure. There's a website. It's KYK9.org, O-R-G. So it's KYK, the number 9, so it's 4 characters, .org. And our phone number's on there. And happy for people to reach out if we can be of assistance or can point them in the right direction. Happy to do that.
Okay. Well, I've really enjoyed hanging out with you today, and I've enjoyed this conversation, and it's been a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you very much.
All right, everybody. Take care and keep wearing out that boot leather. I just want to give everyone that's listening a sincere thank you. Getting this podcast going has been a project. I really hope you're enjoying it, and if you don't mind, give the show a good rating and review wherever you're listening to it at, or share it on your social media to help get some traction. I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to your feedback.